This demonstration shows how to use software and the full spectrum laser to cut and engrave materials. This is full spectrum laser's interface, and we'll go over this in a little bit. But actually the first part you need to know is how to prepare a file for the laser, and that occurs in Illustrator. Illustrator, arguably one of the Creative Suite softwares, is where you send files from. So we'll call this file demo 01 and just make it a 10 by 10 thing. The bed for our full spectrum laser is 36 by 24, so your largest part is 36 by 24. In this case, we'll make something small to demonstrate a few extra points. There's two things you can do with the full spectrum laser, and one is cut and one is engrave. We're going to go over cutting right now. Actually, we can go over both. I'm going to just create some text. This is some text. And then we'll also make a shape of some kind. So, pencil. Whoop. Should work the way out. Stroke. 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 Black. Why is it still not? Stroke. Black. Here we go. Alright, so we have a text and and a shape. For any shape, if you're going to be vectoring, which also is to say cutting, because these are vectors in Illustrator, you want to make sure your stroke is the smallest stroke possible, in this case 0.1 millimeter. If it's set to inches, make sure it's the smallest inches. I think it's 0.003 inches, the smallest stroke possible. If you have a larger stroke, the laser will attempt to cut both the inside and the outside of your stroke, affecting the dimensions of your part. So what I have here is some text and some shape. I'm going to do object artboard, fit to artwork bounds, just to make sure it all fits together. And I see that my box is still pretty big, so object artboards, fit to artboard bounds. Boom, there it is. Now, I want to send this to the laser. What I do is just like I'm sending it to print from a printer. In this case, file, print. And this lovely menu here pops up. This is your print menu. It's as wide as the screen. You want to select your printer to be the full spectrum engineering driver, right there. And you want your media size to be the size of our printer, full spectrum laser FSL Pro LF series 36 by 24. Now, as you can see over here, we have this really tiny object. So it fits on the bed no matter what. It doesn't have to be positioned anywhere in particular. Retina Engrave, which is the laser software, will move it to the top left corner. However, in the event that you have, let's see if I can do this, an object like this that is larger than the printable area in one direction. So in this case, look at this. It doesn't fit on there all the way, right? It's like, OMG, I don't fit. You need to rotate it in your orientation so it does fit. Because if it doesn't, if you see that this is missing, it'll clip that in Retina Engrave. So let's actually just go back to do not scale, move it so it's not being clipped. And you see there's no print button, there's no cancel button. I don't know why, but you just hit enter to print and escape to cancel. So we're hitting enter, printing file demo 1, and it's going to send it to full spectrum laser. This is where you get this warning, large raster job. It's like, oh my god, this is so big. If you're rastering, which is to say you're engraving, you hit yes. If you're not, you're just cutting, you hit no. We're going to load yes just so we can go over both. If you do hit yes, it takes a long time to prepare it. So this is our raster engrave, and this is our vector cut. As you can see, they're both very similar. However, there's no fill on the text in the vector cut. That's because it doesn't deal with the fill. It simply wants the stroke along the outside of it. So you can zoom with the mouse wheel, and you can see both on our letters and on our shape, that red dotted line indicates only one pass being done in one direction of both of those things, which is good. It's exactly what we wanted. Now at this point, you should have already tested your material through ProLF material and focus test and done this simply by hitting run test. So you'll know what speed and power will cut through your material. In this case, if I'm using a thin piece of plexi, let's just say that I am, and I want to cut through it, I need something like power of, I think it's 30 and speed of 70, something like that. And if I ran it at those powers, it would totally just cut right through, which is perfect. We're jumping ahead of ourselves. First of all, you need to make sure you're connected to your laser. In my case, I am. If the laser is on and everything's fine, you should be able to hit refresh, this little button here, and it'll attempt to search the network and connect to the laser. I am already homed. I guess I shouldn't have been, but I'm already homed. But in advance of printing, cutting, you can either, through the interface in the laser, home it, or through this button right here, hit home. And you can see it's moving. Up here is where its current position is, to the home, which is the top right corner. Now this is something unusual about the full spectrum laser. The home is the top right corner, but it cuts and engraves from the top left down. So once you home it, you have to move it back to the left, somewhere to the left edge of where your part is. It's very strange, but it's just the way it is. So as you can see, it's going back to 0. If it was negative in X and negative, or positive and negative in Y, that indicates that it was to the left. Someone was already printing. So there we are. All those lit back up. It's homed. I need it to be over, so I'm going to do a relative move in the X, negative, 18, and in the Y, negative 12, because I want to move it to the center of the bed for the laser to be focused. Once I focus my material, I should do a material test again. That's under material and focus test to know what I'm cutting. Let's go to the position where we're going to want to do the actual, I don't want to do a move relative. I want to move to minus 30 and minus 1. Move 2. I'll be cutting from there. Now, the things you need to know about on this, if you're vectoring, are these settings over here, which we touched on, these settings up here, and a couple of these buttons over here. In this case, this is a pretty straightforward image. These allow me to rotate, mirror, and resize the piece as necessary. And this is the resolution that it's cutting at, which is to say, how many dots per inch in your Illustrator file. This is more relevant when you're rastering. Like this provides your best, generally your best quality. But if you wanted to go faster, you can bring the dots per inch down. Now, once you've done your material test, you'll identify the fastest speed and the lowest power that cut through in the case of the vector. And if you want certain things to be cut and dealt with, it's like one part cut and one part engraved, you can do that in a number of ways. You can, in Retina Engrave, change the color of objects by clicking on them. Boom. Okay, it's red now, and you can see a red popped up over here. Say I want the text cut out, so I'd 70-30. But I only want this line engraved. I'm going to do a faster speed and a really low power. So, sorry, not 55. That will slowly cut this text out, but quickly just go over this line and leave it as a shallow engraved section. And whenever you're ready to do this, you'll simply make sure the ventilation is on for the laser, and you'll hit play. Start job, which is G, and if you want to cancel the job, it's C to stop it. If you wanted to change the colors in advance, and you wanted like, oh, well this, you have a large variety of objects that you're dealing with in Illustrator, you can change your colors. So let's go in here and make the text red. And this thing yellow. You want to be dealing with primary colors or really obvious colors. Let's see if this picks up. For Retina to pick it up. If your colors are really muted or in between, it won't pick them up as things that it can separate. So as you can see, it didn't pick up that red, but it picked up the yellow. So it knows, oh, this object's different. Tell me how you want it to be different. Again, we'll just do it 105. If we wanted to go, we'd hit play. Now, as far as rastering is concerned, you can see the yellow didn't even show up here, which is actually kind of funny. As far as rastering goes, raster is the engraving process. It literally goes back and forth like this, from top to bottom, slowly engraving whatever you have on here. And that's controlled from the top on this panel. So raster power, raster speed are the same things you're using down here in terms of their functions. So you want to reference your material test to determine what power and what speed give you the engraved depth that you want. And say for some reason you want to do both of these things, there is a raster then vector mode that you can use. Again, whenever you're ready, you just hit the start job, and when you're done, it will move back to the same position it started in, so you can repeat the job or just take your material off the bed. This is our full spectrum laser. We've already gone over at Retina Engrave how to prepare files for it. What we'll be doing now is showing you how to prepare the machine using this LCD controller, and then how to set up the ventilation system that's in place. First and foremost, you'll see that this is the ignition key used to control the laser, and this is the emergency stop button. The emergency stop button can be slammed down to stop the machine at any time. I'll demonstrate. Turn the machine on with the ignition key. You can see that it says booting up on the screen. Then it will display an IP address that you can use to force connect to the laser, right there, 149.151.134.20. Any Retina Engrave software should be able to automatically find the laser over the network, but just in case, you can use that IP address. Now, if something's going wrong, slam on the emergency stop button, and it all stops. Now, turn it back off, turn it back on. There's a few commands you need to know about in the LCD controller. But first, the buttons. This first button cycles through the commands. This second button locks and unlocks the commands to give you like toggling between two. This third button homes it or autofocuses it. Fourth button fires a test shot. This cycles through positions on the laser head, and this selects or cancels commands. So we're going to use this first button to cycle through. You can see it says slow XY, fast Z, slow Z, that's nothing, low the default positions, and fast XY. So XY is literally the XY position, Z is literally the Z position. The other button I want to use is this home button, right? There you go, you can hear it homing. Again, the home position for the laser is the top right corner, which is not the 0 position. The 0 position meaning the start of a job is the top left corner of your job. It's necessary to home the laser in advance so it knows where it is, otherwise it won't run any job. Once you've homed the laser, you have to focus the laser. You focus using every specific material, so you have to refocus every time you're cutting something different because they're all of different thicknesses. Focusing is done using this tool. It's called a focus ruler. It used to say focus ruler on it, it's gotten worn off. I like to focus in the center of the bed to account for any major deviation in the material, like warped wood or thick or thin spots, etc. So we're going to move the laser using the XY controls. To the center-ish of the bed. If you want to autofocus, like get it into a roughly good focus position, just so you can walk away, you can toggle through the buttons until until you're in fast Z. And then if you hit the home button, it will autofocus until this plunger is activated by the material. See, it activated the plunger and it stopped. Now this is it's a fine position, but to focus using the focus ruler, you make sure you're in fast or slow Z on the controller. Then you use this and you place it above the brass holder here. What you want is this top notch on the brass holder and this bottom flush with your material. So you can see this is very close. I want to go into the slow Z setting and go down maybe one move. So it's touching the bottom and flush with that. So that's perfectly lovely, focused. It's exactly what I want. Now if you want to do a test material, or if you wanted to do a test in your material, you'd go into Pro LF and then do a material and focus test in Retina Engrave. But we're not going to do that right now. All it's left for us to do is to get into position and then turn the ventilation system on. So to get into position, you make sure you're in XY and go to the top left corner of your material, because that's where your job will start. Just like that. The ventilation system is behind the laser. It consists of a vacuum, a coolant pump, and the coolant itself. Turn all these things on with that power strip back there. There's just a red button that you push. And the other part of the ventilation is getting the material detritus from the vent outside. That happens in this window. Slide it up and down so you can open the window, slide this back in place, put this vent, so it's shooting stuff outside.